This is G Politics. You can like and share this video and subscribe. But most of all, parental discretion is advised.
Which was his continued references to the flu.
Right.
It did seem the way that you described it that President Trump didn't understand some of the basics about the flu and that it's a different virus than COVID. He said to you that he didn't see why he would have to get a flu shot if he didn't have the flu. He didn't understand that it was preventative and not treatment.
That's true.
He also said at NIH, why can't we just use the flu vaccine to prevent COVID?
Right.
Do you think he does not know what a vaccine is?
I think now he, after all of the things we've told him, the thing that I think underlies this, Rachel, is that he wanted it so much to be like.
You talk about this interesting press briefing that you did. This is in March of 2020. And you had to correct the record even if the president was talking. And first of all, how challenging is it?
I said to myself, I have a responsibility to preserve my own personal integrity and a responsibility to the American public, regardless of what administration. I've been responsible to the American public when I first came here half a century ago, and I'm responsible to the American public now. So when I walked up to the podium, I said, here it goes, Dr. Fauci. The president just said that hydroxychloroquine is, the end all. And I'll say, no, I'm really sorry, but that's anecdotal, and there's no information that it...
Dr. Anthony Fauci has a new book out, diving right back into the pandemic and telling the public exactly what it was like trying to get Donald Trump and his administration to take COVID seriously. In On Call, a doctor's journey in public service, Dr. Fauci describes dozens of worrying interactions, including a 2020 phone call with the former president, where he says Donald Trump tried to urge him to be sunnier about the pandemic, which at that point had killed more than 220,000 Americans. Quote, Tony, I really like you, and you know that, but what the F are you doing? You really need to be positive. Dr. Fauci recounts Donald Trump telling him, quote, you constantly drop bombs on me. Last night on Rachel, Dr. Fauci elaborated.
He wanted it so much to be like the flu, because historically the flu peaks and it goes away in March, April it's gone, and then you could go on with the election cycle.
It's a season.
So he kept on saying it's going to disappear like magic, and that's when I had to start saying, no, I'm sorry, but that's not going to happen, and I had to do that publicly. And then when that didn't work, he started invoking magical cures like hydroxychloroquine, and then when it became clear that wasn't working, he brought in Scott Atlas, who told him everything he wanted to hear.
So when we think about the response to the pandemic, Operation Warp Speed is clearly one of the success stories. And also the distribution of the vaccine, which happened very rapidly. As we get further from COVID, I think a lot of people are asking themselves, what did we learn and what will we do better the next time? And one clear area seems to be the school closures,
Right.
which did enormous harm to kids on multiple levels and didn't seem to save lives. And I wonder, can we say today that that is a mistake, the closures?
I think what was not a mistake was the actual closure, because when we had to shut down that 15-day to flatten the curve, we were in a tsunami of cases. Right here in New York, you had freezer trucks in front of Elmhurst Hospital.
I remember the hospital outside my house, but I'm not talking about the initial.
No,
I'm not talking about the initial. I'm talking about the depth.
I'm going to get to that.
Okay.
And the issue is shutting down everything immediately, and we didn't shut it down completely, but essentially major social distancing in either schools was the right thing. How long you kept it was the problem, because there was a disparity throughout the country. If you go back and look at the YouTube, I kept on saying, close the bars, open the schools as quickly and as safely as you possibly can. But initially, to close it down was correct.
I'm not talking about
Keeping it
initially.
for a year was not a good idea.
So that was a mistake in retrospect. We will not repeat it.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
But I want to focus on the word journey in your title, because as you sit here today, you now have to travel with security. You, a public service officer, who basically really has saved millions of lives, you have to travel with security today, because even though you haven't been in this job for 2 years, you are still a lightning rod, because people still, some of them doubt what you say, how you did it, and the way you did your job. when what you always say in the book is that you were guided by science always in telling the truth. And that still seems to have hurt you as we sit here today in 2024. I want to know how you navigate that.
Yeah, I mean, you have to stick with the science. I think what we've got to do a better job is to get the public to understand that science is a self-correcting process. Science is a process that allows you to gather information, data, and evidence, and in the time that you have to make a decision about a recommendation or a guideline, you use the information you have. If you're true to the scientific process, as new information comes the way it did, because clearly SARS and COVID was a moving target, then the scientific process will have you gather information and say, well, wait a minute, maybe this is the way it was in January and February, but this virus is different now.
Yeah.
We are dealing with new information that we didn't have before. That's get confused. People think that science doesn't know what they're doing. That's the problem.
Yeah, and for the American people, if we can't really grasp the science, we lean on our leadership.
Right.
And you spoke about your relationship and write about your complicated relationship with former President Donald Trump. He could possibly be our president again. Do you believe he is fit to lead us if he is elected president?
You know, I don't want to get into what's fit or not. That I want to
From
say,
public health, health perspective.
From a health standpoint, he missed opportunities to use the bully pulpit of the presidency to tell people to do things that would keep them safe. That's what bothers me as a public health person, as a physician, who my only care and goal is the safety and the protection of the American public and their health. And for example, he could have said when the masks came out and the CDC said wear a mask, instead of saying I don't want to wear a mask, he could have said mask saves lives. I'll wear a mask. And then all the people who followed him religiously would have been wearing masks, and it would have been the same thing.
Early on, you called him to say, look, Mr. President, this is serious. You have to be honest with the people and let them know how serious it is. And the very next day, Dr. Fauci, he's saying the whole thing is a hoax.
Yeah.
What did you think when you saw him say that after you had a very extensive conversation?
Intimate meeting.
Yeah.
I was flabbergasted. It was like whiplash. Because when I was speaking to him, one-on-one, saying, Mr. President, you've really got to be honest with people. It will come back to bite you if you don't. We have a real problem. And I actually was convinced that he agreed with me. And then I went home and I put the television on and he said it was a hoax.
Yeah. But he said that he loved you. He said that he loved you and he appreciated the work you did. But while he's screaming at you at the top of his lungs, you said it's very unnerving, even when you're right, to be screamed at by the President of the United States.
That is a fact.
Yeah. We have to go, but what about Biden? Do you believe he is fit to lead us for the next?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because the first thing he did when I became his chief medical advisor, we had a conversation literally the first day saying we want to go with the evidence and the truth, and if we make a mistake, we correct it, but we've got to be honest with what's going on.
Yeah.
That was his first words to me.